All right, guys. So, a few announcements. First of all, I'm going to be putting down in the description down below some links to different protests that are going to be going on over the next couple of weeks / months, and hopefully not for years. So we'll see what we can do to get our voices heard as far as that goes. And then we have the World Cup that's going to be in Washington, D.C. That's going to be a freestyle wrestling tournament that you guys can compete in if you want to do that. We also have 2 Wrestlefest events and maybe another one coming. One of them is going to be in Toronto. Then another one is going to be in Europe. I think it might be Germany. But you can find that on Meat Fighters. I'll put a link in the description for Wrestlefest EU. And then if you want to reach out to, go on Meat Fighters and reach out to MCIC. He is potentially planning to do a wrestling campout, or doing another event that's going to be happening at a campsite. So that's an exciting thing. It's going to be the first time that we've tried to do this. And yeah, the idea came up, and I was surprised how many people were just ready to go onto it. So I just was teaching over at Wrestlefest, and I'm sorry that it's taken me so long to do a video. It took a lot out of me to go do that. I was doing an average of 2 to 3 matches a day with 3 hours of teaching and not a whole lot of access to food. So it was definitely a bit of a rough go, but it was incredibly rewarding to do that and to actually have people in front of me. And I think that it put a little bit more fuel back in my tank to help me do these videos more often. So I have started a Patreon. You guys can look that up. But one of the things that it will be in the description, but anyways, one of the things that came up one of the joys of doing in-person teaching was that I could see where my gaps were in how I describe things, and also where people are not putting enough attention. And I know I've done a couple videos on mat mobility, and I don't think you guys have taken it that seriously. And if you actually want to get good at rolling and being on mats or on beds or wherever you're doing your rolling, once you get to the ground, being mobile on the mats is absolutely everything. We even had somebody in, I think the 3rd class when I had them do shrimping again, was like, shrimping again? Like, yes, absolutely, fuck yeah. And I'm gonna not get rid of that attitude. So I'm liking this 3 camera setup. Sometimes I can have 4 if I set up the tripod with my phone. But let's go ahead and we're going to talk about shrimping first, because I can teach it better than I have been. So the thing about shrimping is that when we get down to our sides, I get into this little ball. This is my starting position for a shrimp, right? And I have a pivot point here on my deltoid and on my toes. And when I lift up off the ground, right, that's the only point of contact that I have. And one of the things that people tend to try to do is they try to push through the shoulder. They're like trying to lift their shoulder, but this is my pivot point. You can't lift off of that. This does not move, as in it doesn't slide, right? So stop trying to make it slide. So what I'm doing is I'm taking my ass and I'm trying to put it on the same line. So if I put my shoulder right here on the seam on my mat, I'm going to put my ass, boom, onto that line, right? And that's the end of my shrimp. Now this is an exaggerated shrimp. You're probably not going to shrimp like this in an actual match or an actual roll, but this is how I want you to start practicing, guys. I want you to make it too big because it's easier to make it too big and then dial it back. So I'm here, and then I bring everything, I bring up, right? And I tuck my toes in, and I shrimp, bring my heels and my shoulders, and I shrimp. So the thing about that is that, and people were having issues with the reset. Remember, this fetal position is my starting position, right? So we're here, and here. Here, and here. So my weight's either going to be on my hips or it's going to be on my shoulders and my toes at the same time. If it's on my shoulders and my toes, the place that's not planted on the ground is the part of your body that moves, which is going to be your butt. If your weight is on your butt or your side, then it's going to be your shoulders and your feet that move, and we're returning to that fetal position. not quite, right? It's this kind of knees in, heels to butts, shoulders up, right? Position. That's what we're going back to. So that's kind of really, really critical, that if you're feeling like you're not going down the mats, don't think about my shoulder's heading in this straight line, right? It's a ratchet. So my body's in this position, and then my upper body goes into this position where I'm perpendicular and I pivoted off of that shoulder, and then I reset with my shoulders front and there. And if you're going to a school right now and you guys are doing this and calling it shrimping, it's useless to you. It is absolutely, completely useless. And I was surprised at when I was teaching mount escapes, and I did the hip escape as part of my lesson, and I modified it by thinking about it. And it's not any way that I've ever been taught, but I was surprised, and I tried it a few times rolling since then, how incredibly easy it was to get that escape with my modifications. So the modifications, and I think I did do it on the video, which, by the way, the stringing submissions video is coming. I'm going to be doing it with Justin. He's coming by next week. So what I did for this is that we are protecting our orange, right? We don't want to get choked. We don't want to have our arms separated from our body. So we do a powerful bridge, and that's going to lift the person off of our hips so that we can start to move. When I land like this. So I bring one of my hips down, and whatever hip is down, my arm comes up and it posts on the hip, right? And so now that I'm on my side, he can't put his weight all the way down on me anymore. I don't care if he starts to come back up. But you see that my elbow is tucked, guys. If I have my elbow disconnected, he's going to crush that, and I'm probably going to get armbarred or get gift wrapped or a number of different things. So I don't necessarily want to have my elbow outside, right? I want to keep it buried in, and then I'm tucked in. And from here, we do that shrimp, and it was just so mind-blowing to me that when I started doing it that way, even against skilled guys, it was so much harder for them to put the weight down on me. So don't be shy about being powerful. You can even do one of these bridges, right? So that I really, really offset him, and then I land into this position. But remember, I don't want him to come up into side mount, right? So I'm blocking his hip with this hand, but I'm keeping my elbow buried. A lot of times I saw a lot of people out here like this, and that's just going to smash down your arm. So that is one big thing. And you guys can practice this by yourself, right? So you just bridge and plop, right? Bridge and plop. Maybe hold that bridge for a split second longer, but get up and then come into the start of our shrimp position. You can even practice burying that elbow and catching the imaginary hip. So I just think that's going to be a really, really good drill for you guys, and you can maybe even start your shrimp practice like this. Now, I had people only shrimping on one side because if you do it properly, there aren't a lot of instances where you're going to switch sides the way that we tend to do it in a jiu-jitsu school, right? Because if I'm doing the hip escape or shrimp escape from mount, right, if I'm flat, right, I might ratchet to get out, right? But that's going to be so much energy. It's so many like little shrimps to do that. Whereas if you can get on your side, there's no reason for me to switch sides. This is getting my hips all the way through. His weight's going to move from my hips to my knee. You see where my hand is? That's where his hips are, right? And then I get out. It's going to be very hard for him to follow me through that. Another note on that is that when I'm doing a hip escape, I don't necessarily want to get my feet out, right? So once I'm past my knees, I'll go back to my back, right? And I've got my hooks in. I might even sit up, right? Even with my hooks in. Because if he starts to come on top of me, it's going to be really easy for me to maintain this 90-90 structure in order to get like a hook sweep or something along those lines. So that is one of the more critical things that we could be doing, and one of the things that people had I feel like that was more my own revelation than it was necessarily something people were struggling with. The thing that came up a lot in the stringing together submissions class, and again, this is all about mobility on the mats, is that when we are like doing the armbar from the guard, right? So my legs are around a person. I will tend to, if he's putting his arm on my belly, I'll bridge up and I'll push the arm to the ground. And that's, if you guys have been following me for a while, you've seen me do this with Jack. But anyways, and you'll see it in the video. But once I get here, right, I've gotten onto my side, and you come up and then you grab their lat and then you have to get back underneath them. And so people were either very light with this or they were really locked up, and then they were so locked up that they couldn't get back under, right? So what I would say is actually you can do a little bit of a put your toes into the mat and just practice this on your own right now. Again, is just dig, right? I am going from my side back onto my hips. So I practice getting here, because if you can get this and you can be percussive enough about it, right, I can get back underneath it. Now, and it's such a thing for me because I've been doing it for so long, getting that angle to finish that armbar was another place where people are having issues. And one of the things that I did emphasize quite a bit was pushing with this leg to get over. But again, and this is a systemic issue, and it's a personal issue, and for each individual. And some of it is that people didn't have strong enough cores to keep themselves off the mat, right? And so if you guys need to do more crunches, do things, hold this position, do penguins, things like that, this is going to help you guys, because in all my years of personal training, one of the things that came up with several people was that a lot of people, when they're weaker in their abs specifically, is that they actually lose range of motion. They can only crunch like to this height. Guys, I want you to be able to crunch up as high as you possibly can. So that's going to take practice. That's going to take training. So that's going to be a very important thing for you. And the reason for this is that when I am underneath and I'm setting up this arm bar, what I need to do is I need to get rid of all this friction here. I've got enough friction with him being on top of me. I've got me trying to clamp his arm to my chest or to my belly. Like, there's enough friction here. So I need to find places where I can relieve that friction. So I'm getting my shoulders, I'm getting my hips off the ground, and I have this leg up, actually, because as I turn, it goes over the back, right? And then I flare out, get my leg over. So if I'm trying to do that, like this right now is a lot of work, right? I'm keeping everything flat here. I'm not even put my head down. Why not? This is so much harder. You see how fast I can go? If I am flat, if that's as fast as I can go, up, it's so much easier. So much easier. So it is absolutely critical to me, guys, that you are drilling these types of things, because, you know, yes, I can teach you how to do an escape. I can teach you how to do an armbar, and that might work okay when we're in class and somebody's not trying to fight you. But if you can get to that point where you know how to control your body on the mat and you can actually start to shift it around, you are going to actually be able to start hitting these techniques while rolling. But as long as you guys are being lazy about things, right? Allowing your shoulders and your hips to drag on the mat, not getting on your side when you're shrimping, not doing, because here's the thing. No matter how much you practice, generally speaking, a certain percentage of how you do a technique is going to disappear, because when you are doing a technique, when you're rolling, it's best if you don't have to think about it. It has to be automatic, which means that you've drilled it so many times that you just say, okay, for a second, like that, I'm going to go for that armbar. That thought might pop into my head, but my body knows what to do from there. I'm not thinking, okay, grab, get on my side, grab the lat, then start to move over. Like, I'm not thinking about those things. Those steps are pretty automatic for me at this point. And that is a big difference. That is huge, because when you start rolling, a big percentage of what you drill is going to disappear. I would estimate for a skilled practitioner, somebody who practices regularly, they're going to lose about 30% of that technique when they go and hit it in competition. So, you know, if I am, again, going back to that mount escape, right? If I am practicing by getting here and start stripping from here, when I start rolling, the strip is going to be here, right? It's going to be back flat, right? But if I emphasize that I'm going to hit that bridge and I plop, this plop here is part of it, right? And I really, really emphasize that part. If I lose 70%, I might only get up to here, right? So I'm not quite vertical on that. This is fine. You'll get that. But keep in mind that when it comes to leverage, right, you have the fulcrum and then you have the lever. As the lever goes up, the amount of resistance that you have tends to go down because you're getting closer to the center line, right? So if I'm trying to get onto my side, the further over I get from that center line, the more that my hips are going to get crushed and put flat back on the mat, right? So if I am always emphasizing getting all the way onto my side and they start to flatten me out, if I stay, you know, 90 to you know, maybe 75 degrees here, right, I'm probably going to be okay. I'm probably going to still be able to hit this technique. But if I get down to like 45 degrees, it's not going to happen because there's more weight, there's more leverage for them to push this hip down and flatten me back out, right? So it's really, really important that we really think about getting onto that side. We exaggerate these motions a little bit. And again, as I said at the beginning of this video, that when you're shrimping, I would rather dial you back from being too big and overemphasizing the movement, right? Where you maybe, like, if I see you going, right, okay, I'm going to come up to you and say, that looks pretty good, now control it, right? So, smooth is fast, fast is, or, sorry, slow is smooth, smooth is fast, right? If that makes any sense. So, when I go, you know, this is good practice here, right? I'm not trying to be too overly explosive, and then when I start to speed it up, and this goes for any technique, that when I start to speed up, right, it's going to be smooth. And that's what we're aiming for, is control. And we don't necessarily want to explode out from underneath somebody's mount anyways, because we're liable to fuck up, right? We're liable to get into a situation that we hadn't intended on. But if I can get to this position and I can be mobile, right, then I've got that, right? Even in competition, you could potentially get this and just go like this and go at that speed, and it will still work because I'm moving my hips, keeping him where he's at. I don't need to be fast about this. He can't really attack me because I've made sure of that, right? He can't really adapt because I've made sure of that. So really, really keep that in the back of your mind. So the other thing was that when we were working on the armbar triangle omoplata drill, right, and I talked about this, like, getting here, and this is almost a reverse shrimp. So getting your heels in and then pulling your hips down. Now, of course, you're doing this from guard, so you're actually kind of like this, right? But it's the same thing. I'm dragging here with this leg to pull my hips back underneath him, right? And I'm turning and looking the direction that I want to go, right? If I'm looking this way, my body's going to struggle to come if I'm being dedicated with my eyes. So instead, it's more important that I get myself to look straight up or over my shoulder to get back to this position. Now, when I come over, I'm going to do whatever I can to get this angle, right? So I usually will underhook the leg over here. That's going to help pull me over. I'm going to use this foot sometimes to keep moving, right? To push myself along. If you're really good, you kind of tend to go, right? So it's one big push and one big pull, and you can get yourself there. But the thing that allows me to do that is the amount of contact I have with the mat, the amount of friction I've allowed myself to have. That's what's going to get me to that position. So I think those are some of my big takeaways. I'm very grateful for everybody that came. It was probably about half the people that signed up in the end, sometimes maybe a little bit under. But for the people that were there, big shout out to Toby. If you guys know who Toby Carter is, he was doing the open mats for 3 hours, and then he came to my classes for 3 hours, nonstop. That guy is a beast. And we had some purple belts that showed up, and some of them really liked what I did, even though they outranked me. They actually learned something. So I'm very humbled by that. I'm very happy to hear that. So if you guys want to, come to Toronto. I'm planning on being there. If the organizers say, we don't want you, guys, harass them a little bit. So thank you guys for watching. Hopefully this was a helpful video and not too much of a ranty one. But I really, really, really want you guys to start drilling this, because this is really powerful stuff. It's more powerful than you guys are giving it credit, from the people I've seen are giving it credit. So yeah, I'm going to make you do shrimping. Yes, I'm going to have you do a lot of drills over and over again, because I don't fear the man who's learns 1,000 techniques. I fear the man who's learned one technique 1,000 times, right? So refine it. Every time that you drill, make it new, make it fresh for yourself. Find something to perfect, because that is what's going to get you there. All right, guys. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time, hopefully with the guard attacks series that we did. All right.